Chapter 17, read by Maya Roberts. The boy's neck bent in an odd way and his body fell limp. Freshman year in college. Man, this is like living in another country, Ramick said to George and Samson as they crossed the green lawns of Seton Hall University early in their freshman year. Yeah, I feel you, George replied. Hundreds and hundreds of students, most of them white, seemed to surround them constantly. I feel like a rock in a snowstorm, completely covered up. Some of the students are pretty cool, Samson commented. They smile, they're friendly, and they even invite us to study groups. It's just that there's so many of them. Yeah, man, it's hard to get used to, Ramick added with a feeling. I remember when white sales clerks followed me around stores looking at me as if I was going to steal something. And little old white ladies hugging their purses when I sat next to them on the bus or subway, George added. Or white police officers stopping me when I hadn't done anything, Samson reflected. It's just hard to get used to feeling normal around here. It's going to take some time, George commented. I suppose they have to get used to us too, he said with a chuckle. There were three of them. The three of them shrugged and headed off to their various classes, which they loved. The preparation of the summer program had really helped, and they helped secure the ability to do the academic work. The social aspect of living in the college atmosphere was a little more difficult, however. One afternoon, Ramick and a couple cousins who were visiting him got into a loud and silly argument in the dorm hallway. Students came out of their rooms, curious to see what all the commotion was about. Ramick, embarrassed by all the attention from a crowd of noisy students, reacted with anger instead of restraint. What y'all looking at? We just having a little disagreement. Go back to where you came from. Most of the students disappeared back into their dorm rooms, not wanting to antagonize Ramick any further. But two students remained. Didn't you hear what I said? Ramick yelled in his loudest, most intimidating voice. Get out of this hallway now. I live here too, one of the students replied in an arrogant smirk on his face. You can't make me leave if I don't want to. Ramick couldn't believe his ears. How dare this college boy challenge him in front of his cousins? What did you say? Ramick asked the student in disbelief. Where Ramick came from, a challenge had to be answered. The result was never very pretty. The young man, who looked completely unafraid of Ramick and his threats, repeated, I'm not going anywhere. I just have to do as much right to be in this hallway as you do. Even though he knew the student was right, Ramick felt his anger rise uncontrollably. He walked over to the boy and said right in his face, I'm going to count to 3. If you don't leave, you're going to wish you had. The student laughed and said to his friend, He's trying to threaten me. Ha, like I care. Ramick had reached to the boiling point. 1, he said slowly and anonymously. 2, he continued with a harsh threat in his voice. 3, and he said finally. Ramick was pulsing with rage. The bold that seemed seemingly unafraid student did not budge. He just stared at Ramick with a confident look and challenge on his face. Ramick, no longer able to control his anger, picked up the student, raised him over his head, and slammed him into the floor head first. The boy's neck bent in an odd way, and his body fell limp. Terrified, Ramick's anger dissipated. Oh my God, I've killed him, he thought. Growing up, Ramick had been taught to fight when he was disrespected, to stand up for himself, even if it meant reacting violently. But Ramick knew he had crossed the line in this situation. When the boy moaned and moved on the floor, his friend helped him up and went back to his room. The dorm hallway was completely empty now and eerily quiet. Back in his room, Ramick played silently, recipient unable to change what had happened. He waited. At 4 a.m., the police knocked on his door and took him to an office on the first floor of the dorm. In his mind, he watched his scholarship and dreams disappear. All his work and struggles over to become obstacles would be gone like a wisp of wind through the trees. In addition to police members of the administration, the student and his mother sat in the room, all looking at Ramick with accusation and disgust. Ramick's heart sank. Is this guy who insulted you? The officer asked the student. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, the young man replied quietly. His arrogance had disappeared along with Ramick's anger. Do you wish to press charges? The officer asked him and his mother. The mother paused and peered at Ramick, who looked at the officer at the floor, ashamed, embarrassed, and angry at himself for losing control. Then she spoke. No, officer, we don't want to press charges. Ramek's head shot up in disbelief. "You don't?" he whispered. His mother said nothing else. The mother said nothing else. Perhaps she knew he would get kicked out of school. Perhaps she saw potential in Ramek's eyes. For some reason, he would never know, she gave him a second chance. Too shocked to even find the words to thank her, Ramek was allowed to return to his room. He still had to face a hearing of school officials, however, and amazingly they too chose mercy and only put him on probation. Which was even more surprising was that white students he barely knew came to his aid. One offered the help of his father, who was a lawyer. Another offered to write a letter of support. Ramek was amazed and humbled, vowing never again to judge anyone just by race. Ramek did his best to stay out of trouble for the next few months. He still felt restless and incomplete. "You know," he told Samson and George one day, all of the dudes and I want to hang out with Plainfield. Only a few of us graduated from high school, and I'm the only one in college." "Yeah, some of my friends, and it's not like they were dumb, but possibilities it was just making so far away," George added with a nod. "I've never seen a college campus until I've got here," Samson admitted. "It was like I was going to Mars, something completely out of reach and not even worth thinking about." "We ought to do something about that," Ramek answered, with enthusiasm. "There are little dudes on the streets right now, just like we are, sitting in some corner about to get in trouble. Why can't we find them and show them the other side of the world?" George and Samson responded with excitement, the three of them trying to figure out a way they could reach out and help some kids and perhaps make a difference in their lives. "Let's form a club, no, an organization that reaches out to kids in the community," Samson suggested. "What should we call it?" George asked. "How about Umoja?" George answered immediately. Umoja in Swahili means collective work and responsibility to the community. "It is one of the 7 principles of Kuwamza." "Perfect," the other two agreed. Over the next few weeks, in between going to classes, studying for tests, and doing executive work in lab classes, Ramek, George, and Samson made other plans. They found a faculty sponsor and convinced the Student Government Association of the university to grant them permission to operate this new organization. Of course, they had no money to work with, so they brainstormed a few ways to raise money quickly and easily and still have fun in the process. "Let's throw a party." "Tight. We can call it Umoja Jam and invite kids from all over the neighborhood colleges." The party was a rousing success. The music was loud, the DJ was cool, and the $5 admission fee from each party-goer added to the treasury and a few newly founded help organizations. It was the first of several such dances which become favorites events on the camp. After they had enough money to work with, Ramek, George, and Samson approached several elementary schools in Newark to try and arrange student field trips to the campus. It proved to be a bit more difficult than they had anticipated because of liability and transportation issues, but they did end up working with a couple schools from Brooklyn. The kids came to the campus wide-eyed and amazed. Umoja brought them lunch, took them on a tour of the campus, and answered their questions. "Is college hard?" one little boy asked. "No, it's harder than high school," Ramek told him. "And it's no harder than high school," Ramek told him, "but there's a lot more work to do. If you study, do your homework, it is really pretty easy." "Does it cost a lot of money to go there?" a little girl wanted to know. "Yes, it does," George told her. "But anybody who really wants to go to college can go. There are scholarships and loans and work programs available. You have to be willing to work hard and find the solutions to make it happen." "You sleep here at night?" another child asked timidly. "Yes, we live in a dormitory and go home only a few on weekends, but a lot of students can live at home and come here every day, on the bus or by car." "You do not know what works best for you," Samson explained, "but it is fun living here because there are fewer distractions. It's easier for me, at least, to study here than at home." One little boy, who had remained silent, looked bored, finally raised his hand. "You have a question?" Ramek asked him. "No, I just think this is all stupid. I don't need to go to college. I'm going to get rich selling drugs." He looked at Ramek, George, and Samson defiantly. The boy's friend, taking courage from his buddy, spoke up next. And I don't need no college either. I'm going to play for the NBA and make millions of dollars. The rest of the students seemed to consider those two with admiration. Remick looked up at them and smiled. Well, me and my two friends here are going to be doctors. And when some drug dealer shoots you, he said to the first boy, or when the field trip to the basketball court and break your leg, he said to the second boy. That's assuming the NBA decides to take your little short behind. We'll be standing there in the hospital waiting to take care of you. We'll be the ones getting paid, and you'll be forgotten leftovers. The two boys scowled and said nothing. The other kids nodded with approval. You can have a future with meaning and respect and possibility. That's what college can do for you. Don't be afraid to dream beyond what you see on the streets every day. A conversation with Dr. Remick Hunt. The end of violence and the start of giving back. I had learned to control, by no means did what I want to forget where I came from or lose my culture. I just needed to commodify my behavior. I had to learn to face challenge without a violent reaction. Usually that student was right, and I was very wrong. The situation had nothing to do with race. It was a learned reaction to the stimulants of physical challenge. I was behaving the only way I knew how. I'd never been exposed to anything else. I gradually learned to discipline myself so that I could deal with challenges in my mind instead of my fists. I will always be grateful to that student and his mother who chose understanding instead of retribution. They gave me the chance to continue my dream. Most of the kids I grew up with didn't dream big. People would tell me that college was hard and it wasn't for people from our neighborhood. It wasn't until I got to Seton Hall that I realized that what they were saying was not true. The funny thing about it was that people who were spreading that lie that never stepped foot into a college campus. That was why it was important for us to figure out a way to expose the kids from our neighborhoods to college. So we came up with UJMA. The name fit perfectly. It meant collective work and responsibility. That's what it was really about, helping your neighbor. I learned the term from a book about 7 principles of Kawaza. The same book talked about the importance of catching our children while they were young before they had a chance to go down the wrong road. Lots of people contributed to helping me. I felt very strongly that I needed to give back by helping the next generation. I still do.